What up, everyone? Welcome to the Outpost Gray show. I am Jax. I am your host, Jax Scott. If this is your first time here, welcome to the show. I am kicking off a new episode. This is episode 1, season 1 of Cyber Leaders Unplugged. It's a new podcast that I've launched, and the purpose behind it, if you don't know, is I just recently, it's been 6 months now, took on a VP of cybersecurity at an education company. And I've learned a lot. Up to that point, I was breaking into the junior executive levels. I had run my own company before. I was really good at leading teams, but I had not had as much experience in the corporate sector at that high of a level. So this topic and things that we're going to talk about on this show are definitely near and dear to me. And it was something that I started to find myself talking to a lot of people about these unique challenges that I was seeing at this level. And I figured I can't be the only one that wants to hear about this. So what better than to launch a podcast? So welcome to the show. If you're new here, hit the subscribe button. I'd love to see you back here. We're going to be doing these shows every Tuesday at 5:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Right now, it's a limited series for season 1. And we're going to be running until the first part of December. And then I will be taking a break I think the last one is literally that last week of November. So no episodes in December as of right now. I think there's around 8 or 10 episodes. There will be a break. I'll make sure to put it out when the break will happen. It's going to be happening in November because I will be climbing Kilimanjaro. So really excited about that. But otherwise, you guys can come and enjoy time with me every Tuesday at 5:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. All right, so enough about me. Let's talk about the guests that we have coming on the show. I'm so thrilled. Let me pull up I have a little document over here. We're going to get away from doing formal bios. So this is going to be, even though I'm in a blazer, it's going to be a casual show. We're going to have fun. It's going to be unplugged. So I'm going to do some high level points on our amazing guest that we've got coming on the show. I've got the pleasure of meeting this individual. It's been, 6 months ago. I met him actually through my company based on the tool that he has. He is Jeremy Fisher. He is the CTO of Query.ai. And we're going to be talking about what is Query.ai. It's a federated solution. It is a startup firm. We're going to talk about what it's like to be in the startup space. If you've ever worked in that space, I have. It's a lot. So I'm excited to kind of dig into what does it mean to be a CTO at Query. Also, he has a background, if you guys are familiar with Archer, well, he led Archer through their launch, and also helped with triple-digit growth of its SaaS products. We'll dive into that more. He's also versed in scaling teams. He has managed global teams. If you've ever ran global teams, it can be very challenging. I have a global team, different time schedules, different cultures. You would be surprised. Even working in the UK, things are just slightly different. And he managed over 120 people. Also, he has navigated the B2C and the B2B environments, contributed significantly to revenue and product growth at the public, the private, and the VC-backed companies. Wealth of knowledge there. Also, innovation in web development as well. So that's just a little bit of the iceberg, but we will bring on our guest right now. Let's do it, guys.
Let's stick to the basics. We both know what we want. Let's just keep it simple.
Woohoo! Welcome to episode 1, season 1. You were the first guest on this new episode. And wow, Jeremy, so excited to have you. How are you doing?
Thank you. I'm doing well. That was a very poppy intro.
I know. I haven't figured out the music yet, but I'll let everybody it's jumped in here. You guys can tell me how you like the music. Hey, Tom. Tom is in here. Got to get a shout out to all of everybody that's popped in. Kevin. Kevin said he's relatively new to all things cyber. So happy that he's here. I think you're going to gain a lot of knowledge. Tom, always great to see you. Thank you for the support. Mark, you were awesome. Ben, I just saw you. Just joined and ready. Yes, let's do this, Ben Howard. This is going to be good. We're going to have a lot of fun discussion. So, Jeremy, CTO of Query. That's how we met. Startup life isn't easy.
No, it's definitely not. Definitely not. I've been really fortunate to have started my career in startups. I was employee number one in a SaaS startup in 1999, and that was like SaaS. So that was it's
Yeah, that was like
revolutionary at
still
that
new.
point.
Nobody probably even knew what
Um,
SaaS was really in
no,
1999.
investors figured out that recurring revenue is a cool thing, though. They were quick to pick up on that. Um, but then I've got to have some really big jobs, like jobs in big companies, jobs with leading very large, like you said, globally distributed teams. I've done that a couple of times, and now I'm back in a startup, like going back to my roots, and
Mm.
it is a lot of fun, but it's not easy.
It's a lot of work. Like you've got to be wearing a lot of hats. I'm curious though, you said kind of going back to your roots, were you missing that like being in a startup environment and vibe and you were kind of seeking that out?
I absolutely was.
Wow.
I spent the better part of a decade in big, kind of corporate executive jobs. And I'm so thankful for the opportunities that I had there and the experiences, what I learned.
Yeah.
And, when you're leading a really large organization, you get to have such a big impact on so many people. And that's great. But also, your days are very different. And uh, I was looking for a way to get back into something that was a little more creative, a little, call it closer to the metal.
Yeah.
Part of it was because I missed it. Part of it was because I wanted to test myself and see if I could still do it. I spent so much time as kind of a muckety muck, um, and it's been
Kitty muck.
hard but really good. So you told me to be my
Yeah, I
authentic.
love it. No, it's all chill. So Ben Howard did say that. I think he was talking about when you said in the 1990s, he was in middle school. So definitely didn't know anything about SaaS at the time. Who
Yeah.
would have thought, Ben? Now you're all in the world of cyber. I think you are. If you're in cyber, Ben, tell us if you're in cybersecurity and what you do. So you came back. A lot of people avoid startups. I know I had my own startup company. It was not tech. It was actually in the government space. Do not want to ever run a defense contracting firm again. Like
Mhm.
somebody actually proposed that to me about, I think it's been a month ago. It was when I was still living in Northern Virginia. And I literally got nauseous. So never going to run a defense contracting firm again. Too much work to try to get those contracts. But then to the startup world, I mean, it's a hustle, it's a grind. And I didn't have the best experience, because in my opinion, there are a lot of tech firms out here that are selling snake oil. And I got on one of those companies that I started to realize that they were bloating the data. And as soon as they realized that I knew what they were doing, which only took about 6 weeks, I got laid off. And so I went from having a really good job at a bank to then being laid off 6 weeks later. And it was a really bad taste in my mouth. So and there's a lot of companies out here with AI that are just popping up. It's like corner stores with AI solutions. So how do you guys combat that, especially being in your space, to avoid being that, okay, is your product actually work? Like, how do you combat all of that in that space, in the tech startup world?
Yeah, there's a lot there.
Yeah, there was a lot there.
As far as like the experience in startups, I always tell people it's especially important in a startup to pick your coworkers on your way in. Like I was very choosy when I came to Query. Um, the my colleagues mattered a whole lot to me. Wanted to
Yeah.
know that I could work well with people because startups can be pretty stressful. You're in the trenches together. You need to land with people that you can build trust with and get to like a high trust team. And if you pick any like 50,000 plus employee company and your experience is going to vary a lot. You can land in one part of the company and have a great experience, in another part of the company and have an awful experience. And it's all about the people around you. But in a startup, there's nowhere else to go but out.
Yeah.
um, and
Yeah. Mark's agreeing with you. Like on the startup, you have to wear multiple hats, make mistakes, and pivot from them. Next time you have to repeat the action. And startups is where he learned all the stuff he knows. So you feel like that's for you too. It's like you learned so much more being in a startup than being in the muckety muck.
You learn different things.
Yeah.
As a muckety muck, you do learn a lot, at least if you
Yeah.
pay attention. But yes, in I learned a ton, like the technical skills. I'm a product development executive, so software engineering, and database administration, systems administration, like the front end side, user experience design. There isn't a job that I lead that I didn't do at one point in my career, at least for call it a quarter of my time.
Yeah.
And that was because I often was either in a startup or I was in kind of a startup within a larger company, which is also different from a startup, but also a fun gig.
What do you think, outside of getting funding, is one of the key? Now, if you had to say like one thing from your lens for a tech startup in this space, especially with how like regulations are starting to come out around tech companies, what has been one of the key challenges you've seen from your lens in the space of startups nowadays versus maybe in the 1990s?
Oh, honestly, I think the landscape has changed so much. The way company valuations have changed a lot. The financial tools around startups, the public sentiment towards startup. In the 90s, there were no unicorn companies, right? We had, if you
That's
look
true.
at the actual numbers on the dot-com bubble, it was relatively small compared to we'll say newer bubbles. I think valuations have gotten a lot higher in some ways. In 2021, we saw crazy high valuations, and then in 22, things got way more competitive. But there continued to be a lot of capital looking for a place to land. There just it became a lot choosier.
Hmm.
So that's one way. The one thing that has changed a ton in how we bring a technology product to life is the security and privacy landscape. Like early 2000s, nobody was really thinking about privacy. I worked in advertising through most of the 2000s, and there was no GDPR, there was no SOC 1, not much, SOC 2,
Yeah.
Basel,
Yeah.
that stuff, right? And so it was much more Wild West. Security practices were, you could be good, but you could get away with being bad. And it's for the betterment of society that we're all better at these things, and
It is.
ethics are higher, and doing the right thing. It's now easier, I guess, and there's a lot more compliance to pull laggards along. But it does take a lot more work. It's relatively easy to build we'll say a prototype that won't pass a pen test. But then to build a hardened enterprise grade solution takes a lot
Yeah.
more. So that's different.
Can you share a little bit? We didn't really talk about what Query does. So can you share at a high level, what is Query.ai? Because you guys have been around for what, 5 or 6 years now? Or am I getting that wrong? Maybe longer.
Maybe not quite that long. We've been
Okay.
around for a while on
Yeah.
paper. Series A was at the end of 21. That's kind of like the official start, and then
Yeah.
we rebuilt the product and really went GA at the end of last year. So this iteration of Query, I'd say we're a year-ish in. As far as what Query does, the category, such as much as there is one, is federated search. And you can, if you've heard of a like data fabric, data mesh, we're kind of like adjacent to a service bus. But really what we do is we bring visibility to your security relevant data without you having to move it. And that was what attracted me to Query. It's a really hard problem. So it's search across disparate data sources. The hard part of what we've had to do at Query is provide a sort of universal data structure and a universal set of search operators across all of these data sources that usually don't want to play well in one way or another.
Yeah. So federated data was is it kind of a relatively new term? Wouldn't you say that still in the space? Like you're still feeling like you're having to teach people what federated data is and what you kind of do?
Yeah, federated search for security
Federated search is what I meant, not data. Yeah.
is definitely
Decentralized
pretty
data.
new. Yeah, and there's no, I'll say with some pride, there's no company doing what Query does the way we do it.
That's awesome. Yeah.
We've got it. Yeah, we have a few kind of like adjacent competitors who are also small. There are features in a couple of larger security organizations that are kind of competitive. The notion of a federated data store isn't new, but federated search,
Yeah.
how do we bring, there are a couple of reasons that people like us. The CISO tends to like us because we bring choice and control around really cost management. We can help with data sovereignty, leave data in, whatever country it's governed by, and still search it, but also give you the choice to, take advantage of storage tiering in a way that you usually can't today with SIMs and other tools. We also bring really up to the minute data. If you think about, if I want to go search through something like Active Directory or Entra, and like whatever my IDP is, I really want to know the absolute current state of information there. I don't want the copy of it that we moved into our SIM 2 months ago. And so we can help with that. Also, things like enrichment with threat intelligence. We do some things that are SOAR-ish.
This is great. Yeah. Where can it search? We've got kind of the list here for anybody interested. I shared the link in chat. I don't know if you all should be able to click on that, but check this out. Go check out Query.ai. I'll drop the link to Query as well. If this is something you all are interested in. I know that we've utilized it. I've used it. I think it's a great tool. And I think that, yeah, you guys are definitely groundbreaking as far as being the first ones in this space. Do you find that because think about it, like you're new in the space, you're going to have to educate a lot of your users. Have you found that as a challenge though? Or have you found that most people get it right away and want to get on board?
No, I think we've definitely had challenges with education. I think the people who are responsible for data architecture, like your high level architects and data engineers, security engineers, like the senior technical ladder, those folks really love us. CISOs tend to love us, especially a visionary CISO, like where you're at now. You've got a leader with a pretty long view, who's looking to bring more cutting edge in. And so we do really well with that crowd. When we get to the SOC analyst, we're really bringing advantages to the enterprise. It takes us a while to help analysts get that, hey, you don't have to have like 30 different tabs open. You can hit all of those data sources from one console. You don't have to remember that it's like, src_IP in this source, and it's, source.ip over here. And like, it's not, you can let go.
It's a lot. Yeah. And you see it like, I have to get to a point where I just close out all my browser, like a browser, because I have so many and they start getting tinier, and then it makes it harder to try to exit. And then I'm just like, you know what, my ADHD brain, I just close the entire browser. I'm like, if I needed it that bad, I'll refine it again. So it is a very, very helpful tool. Can you share, do you all have any big plans that you're planning to unveil in 2025 as you?
Man, a year, that's a very long time in
the startup world.
Like kind of directionally, the things that, we get pulled into more SIM-like features, like more analytics. We get pulled in towards mobility and playing a bigger role in data pipelines. We're really working with our early customers and the market to figure out what the best way forward is. I'd say right now we're really still focusing on just making search awesome.
Yeah, no, that's
the
good.
internal tagline. So we've got a couple of features that are coming out soon that will help with that. But
so we have, and we'll pivot to this because I think this is a good segue into it. So we've got Query. It's Query.ai is the URL. But I've utilized the tool, and I don't remember there being AI integrated into the platform. Is there AI integrated into the platform yet? Or is that a future plan? Is that why you guys kind of went with Query.ai? Or was it just like, this looks like a very tech URL?
Yeah. No, there is AI in the platform, but there's a funny story around it. Like, I'm grinning. The product started off as, in 2019, 2020, as more of like NLP, like an Alexa type assistant for your sim.
Oh,
Um,
interesting. Okay.
yeah, but as is often happens in startups, the idea you start with is often not the one that really resonates the most. And along the way to building out that assistant technology, the team started to bring other data sources in to add context. And as it turns out, security operators didn't really want the Alexa type support. They just, like, well, I already know SPL or whatever. I'll just key that in directly. But there was, the bit about bringing more data in without moving it really resonated. And so we pivoted, and that was around the time that I joined. And so that the AI was originally the NLP side. And we, I actually pulled that out. And
Oh,
then
really? Okay.
shortly after that, ChatGPT made a big splash, and suddenly, every board everywhere was saying, "What are you doing with large language models?" So we deferred answering for a little while, but this year we brought the AI back, and so we now have an LLM integration in it. When you run a search with Query, you get a whole bunch of results back. The LLM can ingest that and give you back a human-friendly summary, which is pretty cool.
Oh, yeah.
I personally, I didn't want to like it because I'm more of the power user, I guess. But when I started using it in our product, I said, okay, this actually pointed some things out to me that I would have missed
Yeah.
interpreting these results. So
Oh, that's a
it is
telltale
pretty
sign.
helpful.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So AI, I mean, that's the hot topic. I mentioned it earlier. Organizations are just popping up on the corner. They sell this one product, and next thing you know, they're putting whipped cream on the top of AI. It's like all AI. It's the AI sandwich right now.
Mhm.
With that being said, we're starting to see more and more like legislation coming out around it. We saw the EU AI Act. There's been some legislation in California because us in America, we like to do things a little differently, where we don't really do a national privacy act or a national AI act. Each state's going to do their own thing. So we're seeing that kind of trickle down. But there is concern around the impact of AI, and not just the bias and possible discrimination that we're already seeing in certain models, but more around the humanity piece. And so we were briefly talking about this before we went live around, like, look at social media, look at how it's literally changed our entire lives. Not only how we view the context of the world around us, our social beliefs, everything, but also like how we communicate and engage with one another. So the UN has proactively come out with a recent document. I don't know if any of the viewers have read this. I shared it on LinkedIn. I think it was actually this morning, my thoughts on it. And it was governing AI for humanity. And I know you hadn't read the article, but we were going to kind of talk through it. I was going to kind of just get your initial thoughts on like AI for humanity and where you see us going. And do you feel we're doing enough as far as governing AI? And like, I feel like it's a very like, we have to be careful to not govern too much. But I think if we don't govern enough and have some oversight, we could see what happened with social media happen with AI, but differently.
Yeah. I absolutely think that it should be getting more attention, more legislative attention. I won't be too prescriptive on what the outcome is, but it is definitely a technology that has the potential to be the next or a next revolution for humanity. And it's a little sad to think that
Yeah.
we're not,
Yeah.
it's not getting a lot of attention at that level.
Yeah.
And that's not a new thing.
Yeah.
AI's been around, since the 50s, really.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah. People
AI
don't realize
conferences in the
it's been around
50s.
for a long time.
Yeah. And we've gone through a lot of these AI winters, a cycle of a lot of hype for AI, and then it doesn't quite live up to the hype. And, funding pulls back, excitement pulls back. And then, the researchers are quietly incubating the next innovation, right? The next leap in deep learning, in large language models, whatever it's going to be. And then we get all excited again. And I think we're now seeing the LLMs. I think we're past the hype, and people are finding useful ways to involve them in their work, and there's more human augmentation with them now, and I think we're figuring out where they fit. But we're not thinking about what the next exponential jump there is.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. What are your thoughts as far as like creating a global AI fund? So part of this article is about, or report is about, like creating a global AI fund that'll help serve countries that don't have as much wealth and are not as developed, like Africa, for example. Half of their country, I might be overquoting this, but I think it is around half that they don't have the proper infrastructure in place to be able to even run electricity, even Wi-Fi in certain areas. So AI, I mean, they just need electricity. They just need the foundation for it. So they're looking at doing a global AI fund to help with this development. Do you agree with that as far as helping with pushing AI out to as many countries as we can possibly push it out to?
Conceptually, yes,
Yeah.
without having looked at the details.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, maybe an example there, like a carbon credit kind of. It's maybe not a great example, but thinking about ways that rich countries can. We're at a time in the last, call it 200 years, humanity, that the rich have always been getting richer, but in the last 2 centuries, that's been happening much, much, much faster.
Yeah.
And finding
Yeah, it
ways
has.
to buffer that.
Yeah. So I agree that we do need to have better governance. Let me stop sharing this. Definitely anybody's watching, check out that article. It's a good read. Chris, always great to see you. Thanks for jumping in. Yes, Kevin, it is actually called, hold on. What was the actual name? I thought it was called Governing AI for Humanity. So I said it wrong. AI on Humanity. Yeah, it's Governing AI on or for Humanity. Here, let me show you guys and all you have to do is literally Google this and it will come up. This is it. You can also go to my last post today and you can get my summarization in here for anybody that's looking for it. All right. We had Kevin mentioned something. He said, there will then need to be some cyber involvement. The degree of it, sticky point, I bet. I think this question or this statement is probably around AI. And I think we obviously do need to have some security, but it's challenging with AI because we say AI is like all inclusive, but there's so many pieces that go into AI. You've got the model, you've got the filters, you got the learning language models, like all these things, but we always think about the black box, but we forget about all the other things. So trying to secure all of that, I don't think we've figured that out yet. I don't know where that secure would be, to be honest. Yeah.
I do think we've done a better job with this than we have with past technologies, and that's probably awareness and the states of security today. When I think about a lot of times if you see a large language model integrated in a product, unless you're Microsoft, you're probably building on top of OpenAI or Gemini or Bedrock or something, and you're using some AI as a service. But those I think that the interfaces to those are a lot better than some other early technologies I could think about. And but I think where I think about it is maybe less security and more risk. Like I'll put my Archer hat on. Literally, there's probably a couple in my closet.
Oh man, you should have had that. Although Query may not have liked that. Yeah.
Well, no, there's a Query hat on my desk. It's always
That's
nerdy.
awesome.
the
Just
risks
pop
with
that
AI.
on midway through, and then that'll be the short that I sent to Matt to be
Uh,
like, "Hey, do
yeah.
you want to sponsor next season, season 2? Look, Jeremy was on there with a query hat."
Well, Query, we have very good taste in swag, like Yeti water bottle.
I have a rad shirt from you guys. Yeah, it's my
Yeah.
RSA shirts, literally. Yeah,
Yes.
you guys do actually do pretty good gear, I gotta admit. Yeah,
Yeah. We punch above our weight in a lot of
yeah,
ways.
yeah. But
Uh,
Archer, sorry,
yeah,
we
yeah.
did
There's the
back.
risk associated with
Yeah,
AI. There's obviously a lot of strategic risk. What if we don't adopt this fast enough? What if we don't figure out how to adopt it? There's the lots of human risk. Plenty of creative destruction potential there, and then even just more mundane for any organization. What if the AI tells us to drive over the cliff, or
yeah,
however that
yeah.
manifests.
Yeah, that's the learning model. What is it called? What learning model is that? Where it's reinforced learning is the learning model. So like no, so driving over the cliff, hopefully it doesn't do that, but it'll learn through the reinforcing learning model. And
Yeah.
hopefully it won't do it again.
Yeah.
So, but you're right that like joking aside, that's why when Tesla first came out, there were a lot of car accidents. It had to learn, like they were still doing the machine learning on a lot of those models to get it to know, okay, when is a person crossing the road or a cat crossing the road versus something getting blown across the street or vice versa? Is that a tumbleweed getting blown across the street or was that a little kid? Like knowing the difference of that, we're still in that, I believe we're still in that infant stages with a lot of models right now because it is still early. You were talking about, AI did come out a long time ago, but we didn't have the technology to support it. Now we have the technology in a lot of ways, but in a lot of ways, I don't feel like we still have the appropriate technology to support where people think it is. Like, those like gifts where it's like where people think AI is, but where AI really is today. I think we still need to grow a little bit further as far as the technology to support AI.
It's definitely good. It will continue to.
Yep.
It's one thing about it is it will grow exponentially, and humans are not good about thinking in exponential scales. We think linearly because that's how we experience most of the world.
Yeah.
But, yeah. No, I don't. We don't have all of the parts we might want, and a lot of us tend to forget that AI. We're not trying to make AI that thinks like humans. The most sophisticated AI models tend to model just the neocortex in a mammal, which is a 2 millimeter thick layer on top of this big lizard brain.
Yeah. Oh God, the good old lizard
So
brain.
it's a foreign mode of thinking to us.
Yeah.
Alien.
So, okay, we're going to pivot a little bit, but kind of in the same topic, talking about like product development. You've done a lot of this, like in your time with B2C and B2B, you were part of the product development. One of the things that I've seen in my space, because I work not only in the office of CISO, but we touch out into the divisions, and it's a very large education company, massive. Large isn't even the right word, like very massive. And each of those divisions have business units, and our end users a lot of times are students. More times than not, it's either students or teachers or contractors of some type. And what I've started to notice, and I'd love your thoughts on this, is like we're all focused on like security and development, but really focus on like this has to be secure, that we forget about the end user experience. And that's something that I have been very intentional about communicating, because we're working on a product to get one of the clients moved off a current platform into a more secure environment. And I have like the architecture team in there. I've got, IT in there, security team, and the business owners. And I will say, yes, this is what we need to do because of this risk that we have. However, we've got to focus on user experience as well. Like reminding them it's not just about like functionality and scalability, but it really is about the user experience. In your world, how do you feel that we can balance that better and still focus on that scalability and like security, but still provide a good user experience?
Yeah, in product development, I think you can absolutely provide a great user experience and still make it secure. There are a few points where you might add friction to the user, but say for the greater good, like, MFA, like, gosh, I'm logging in and I forgot my phone's like at the other end of the house. And I'm like, okay, that's a mildly annoying user experience, but that's not so bad for the benefits of MFA, right?
Yeah.
Um, in internal IT organizations would maybe do well to think about how to provide a good user experience to their internal customers while keeping things secure. Uh,
Yeah.
but yeah, when building product, really, um, my time in B2C, especially B2C advertising and media, that's a really, really cutthroat space, where you're not really, unlike an enterprise SaaS deal where you're signing people up for 1 to 5 years at a time. In that
Yeah.
space, the user's with you for as long as you are useful to them, and you can have one really great month and then lose a lot of ground to a competitor if you're not on top of your game. And that kind of pressure really did make for much better user experiences in those products. And then later, I found myself in a large old financial services company that had a few kind of online banking styled apps there for mutual funds and retirement funds, but we were having a really hard time with customers who expected us to be more like what they experienced on Facebook or Google.
Yeah.
um, Wealthfront and Robinhood came out while I was there and provided a much slicker investment experience, and we struggled to keep up with it. And that was the last big thing I was working on at that post, was a kind of digital transformation. And a big part of that is putting the user first and foremost.
Digital transformation. Okay, that's a catchy word. Like digital, like you hear that. What does that mean? Digital transformation.
Well, when I was tasked with leading it, or leading a part of it in a large organization at the time, I thought, isn't this just the way? This is the internet, right? What's the transformation? But I think I came to appreciate a lot of firms, even today, still a lot of back office tech. Some good examples. COVID
Yeah.
really accelerated this, and that's why tech valuations went just
COVID
crazy.
did.
Yeah,
Oh, wow.
2020
Okay.
and 2021, everybody had to
True.
digitally
Yep.
transform very fast.
That's such a great example. Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
just look
Forced
at
to.
how many places have curbside ordering today that did
Yep.
not have curbside ordering in
Yep.
2019. Right, that was
Yeah.
huge push on digital transformation.
But I think too, to that point with COVID, I was just talking to a leader about this. So we saw, you just made my lizard brain go now. So COVID happened. We were forced into this digital transformation space. Everybody's working at home now. AWS is making everybody come into the office 5 days a week. And I definitely have my feelings about coming back in 5 days a week. And one of the things I posed to my CISO last night at dinner is, I'm like, I understand wanting to bring people in and create this community. It's going to be very, in my opinion, it's very hard to do, because I think community is really around the younger generation, not so much people around our age. We've got families. I don't have kids, but I know people with kids. They got lives. They want to go, they want to do work, they want to go home. They don't want to have to like try to hustle to get their kids into the office just to sit there all day and be on meetings. And that's what I told him. I'm like, I literally sit there all day and I'm just on meetings, and I could be doing that in comfy shorts at my house. And he brought up a good point. And I don't know if you've forgotten about this. I have, but before COVID, we didn't have back-to-back meetings. We had like a couple of meetings throughout the day, or maybe you did, but
Yeah,
like I worked at like Mandiant right before it happened, FireEye, and we didn't have a ton of back-to-back meetings. We had like team meetings. We'd all go into a meeting room. We had the option to work at home. I like to go in the office. We actually like to go in the office.
mhm.
And it was very communal, but I don't know if we're going to get back to that vibe. And how are we going to get people to move away from back-to-back meetings, Jeremy? I think people see that as being effective.
I think back-to-back meetings, in my experience, that has more to do with corporate culture. Like I've been in companies where that was a thing, and I've been in companies where it wasn't. Um, that hasn't felt like a COVID thing for me, but that might be my experience at RSA pre-COVID. I had back-to-back meetings, and I live in Kansas City. I would drive in to the office, and then I would spend almost my whole day talking to people in India, in Boston, in Israel, in where the Valley, right?
Yeah, yeah,
People
yeah.
all over,
Yeah.
and spent very very little of my day talking to people who were also in Kansas City. um, but I think yeah, like Query is not a back-to-back meeting place, and
Hmm.
we're a small company. We're all remote. There's a little more comfort with asynchronous work, or at least we've maybe built the skills for
Yeah.
asynchronous work. There's
Good.
some things that everybody has to do. You got to do together, and we definitely still have meetings.
Yeah.
Uh,
How many
but
meetings would you say are like a heavy day for you?
well, I can tell you at RSA, I
Oh yeah,
had
that's
a
probably
heavy day was like 11 hours in
yeah,
meetings.
that's insane. Yeah, RSA is a totally different beast. I actually hate conferences. I'm so tired. I need like a full weekend to just sleep. Yeah.
Oh yeah, and I mean RSA, the company before,
Oh, okay. I thought you meant the
not
conference,
just the conference. No, the
but the
conference.
conference was probably 11 hours for you as
When you
well.
work for
Yeah.
RSA and you go to the RSA
Oh
conference, it's
God.
very different.
Yeah. So you
But
worked
yeah,
okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm tracking now. So yeah, so that's where you're talking about your corporate life. So you did
yeah.
those back to backs, but you're now where you're at, it's not like that. So like what's an average day at Query look like for you as far as meetings go? Like a couple of hours of meetings, you can do deep work the rest of the day.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
that
So
sounds
for
lovely.
me, I lead a team. So, one-on-ones, I'm
Yeah.
usually involved in most of the projects we have going on in some way. I talk to, usually a couple of prospects, a couple of customers, a couple of partners throughout the week. Um, and I'm maybe half my day in meetings. Tuesdays are usually my worst day, and I might spend, I don't know, 3/4 of my day in meetings on Tuesday. So
Yeah. It's hard to do like I love what Kevin said. Yeah. And you say deep meetings, but let's take that word like a little bit, not only brain overload, but like how do you need to get deep work done in this field? And it's really hard at our level. Even at our level, we still need to do deep work. We still need. I was just working on an architecture document for our new definition for high value assets. Like I need like an hour and a half to 2 hours. I can't do something like that when I've got back-to-back meetings and I have a 30-minute block and I just did 3 or 4 hours of meetings. So it can get a little hectic in the corporate space with the meetings. When you were in corporate America at RSA, how did you manage that? Like, what did you do? Block your calendar? Did you just like suck it up, figure it out, get into work early, stay late?
a little bit of those things, but I worked with an executive coach for a while who was
Mm.
really good,
Yep.
and he pushed me on energy management. So
Mm.
time management, that's the basics. And yeah, it's important to block some green space on your calendar. And I've heard, very, very high level executives put a lot of emphasis on that. And it is important. Um, the truth is most of us, even most C-suite executives can't just spend 80% of their day in green space doing the Don Draper thing with their feet on their desk.
That'd be great.
But thinking about, you do, like as a senior leader, you do get to structure your day on your own terms,
Yep.
for a lot more than you do in farther down the ladder, so to say. Um, and with that, you can think about what are the things I do in my day that I have to do, but really take the wind out of my sails, and what are the things that I do in my day that lift me up, and for me, like customer meetings tend to lift me up, even the ones where, the bigger, older products where maybe they weren't all happy customers, but I still found those to be satisfying. The kind of coaching and mentoring
Yeah.
side of the job has always been performance management. I've always enjoyed those things where I feel like I'm making a difference. Like,
what takes the wind out of your sails then? What are the things that you're like, I do not want to, like, I don't like doing these meetings?
I think you end up in a lot of meetings where you're thinking to yourself, this could have been an email.
Oh God. Yes. Yes. I actually try to push back, or I'll, when I get those, I'm like, can you explain to me what the agenda is for this? And yeah, I think all of those approaches are really critical. I like what you said about going back to something you said, you have control, a little bit more control when you're at the higher level. I think that's really important for people to hear, because I feel like, because I also have an executive coach, and I'm pretty good at time blocking. Some weeks just get insane. It just does, because you got deliverables. But for the most part, I've done fairly good job. I like the energy blocking, or energy, like controlling your energy and knowing that what's going to lift you up versus not. But I think too, it's reminding yourself that you are the one in control of your calendar. And if you don't want to have one of those meetings, not think like we do live in a very serious world in cybersecurity. I think sometimes we take things really seriously, but if it's not time sensitive, nobody's dying, this isn't an incident, it can either be like shifted to the right, or see if you can write an email and get it tackled. Like, you can take control of your meetings and your calendar. And you can also do that at the lower level a lot of times too. I mean, unless you're in the consulting world, I used to be a consultant. It's a little harder when you have, like, I had 4 clients. I obviously did not tell the clients, no, I can't make that meeting. So there were times that you got to suck it up, but a lot of people, I think you can have better control of your calendar.
Yeah. When I was a consultant for 2 years, and I went to so many meetings.
Brutal.
Yeah. And a lot of it was just to prevent something bad from happening. Like, I have to be there in case it goes sideways. And that is not fulfilling.
No. It's brutal. So all these things you've learned along your journey, I love that. So we've got a little less than 15 minutes, and I want to talk to you about high performing teams. But before we do that, we got a couple of questions that came in. So Chris Young, we kind of touched on this, but dive a little bit deeper. He's asking, is AI outpacing our ability to secure it, or are we able to balance its implementation with governance?
I mean, my take, I think we're actually able to secure it. I think just cybersecurity, right? Like, encrypt in transit, and be careful about sending sensitive information across, etc. Like, those things, I think we already have the tools in place to do. The balancing its implementation with governance, though, no. I will say one good thing: a lot of the controls we already have in place to prevent bad actors apply to AI. So the rogue AI. But one thing we have to remember is that anytime you automate a thing, like the self-driving cars, right? A lot of times a person would see your tumbleweed Jax and, think it's a small child, or vice versa. That stuff happens. We don't think about it because it happens at a low and consistent background rate. When we automate something, now we take that risk, but we concentrate it because everything's done the exact same way. And if, when you're using an automated process to do something 1,000,000 times, if it fails 1,000,000 times. And that's how you get like the flash crashes in markets and things like that.
Yeah. All great points. Chris Young said, thank you for directly addressing this and more. Of course, Chris.
Yeah.
Love to have you. Thank you for the support always. Okay, so Professor Black Ops dropped this earlier. I asked for clarity on this. I asked him if he was asking specifically for Query having these compliance certs. So he was curious if Query has the big compliance certs.
SOC 2. Yeah. So we're a US company. And that's deliberate, SOC 2, because that's, most US organizations or third-party risk, the third-party risk arms of most US organizations want a SOC 2. When you're in Europe and APAC, they tend to lean more towards ISO. NISTs, I really see more as like if you're aiming for federal is when that tends to be more relevant. So we are a startup. And one thing about a product, as a product executive, when you sign up for those, you kind of sign up for them forever. So, we're small, we're starting out. So we're proud to have a SOC 2 at this stage.
Yeah. SOC 2 is good.
Worked hard to get that.
Yeah, it is. SOC 2 is hard. NIST, I feel like NIST is good, but I do think the SOC 2 for the space you guys are working in, the clients that you want to have, it's definitely
Oh
one
yeah.
step above. Yeah.
And we've always had an eye towards ISO and NIST.
Mhm.
But the difference between kind of building with those in mind and getting through the audits and getting to the attestations is very,
Yeah.
there's a lot more work and cost involved.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So pivoting to high performing teams. What direction do I want to take this? Okay, I'll start with some stats really quick. So I'm all about high performing teams. We're both high achieving people. You wouldn't be a CEO of a startup company if you weren't. So that's out of the way. So we know that you're that way. You probably lead in a similar way, and you probably expect similar standards from your team. It's just typical of high achieving individuals. Typically when you get a team, you don't know, like you've worked with and managed lots of people in your life, and to get a high performing team, it's roughly only 7% of teams that actually reach like high performance. And that in my mind is having a group of people with high achievers that can work collectively on a goal, but also work autonomously as individuals, kind of like as mini entrepreneurs in a way. How do you feel that you do as a leader, as far as in your prior jobs or currently being an effective leader, to get people to think or change the way they think from maybe, we'll just say, mediocre teammates into high performing individuals to create a high performing team?
Yeah, that's a really big topic. Um,
Yeah,
now at Query, I've had the advantage of hiring most of the R&D team, and so
that helps.
like, yeah, that helps a ton. And our
Yeah.
team is great, but everybody was really like, we hired to the culture we wanted. We've got a clear mission,
So
and
let's
I
say
think
you weren't able to hire to the culture you
yeah,
wanted.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's
that's
when you really earn your keep as a
yeah.
professional leader. It's easy to hire. Well, it's not easy, but it's easier to hire a
Yep.
team than to walk into an organization. Like, the big jobs I had that came with teams in the hundreds. Those were people who were set in their ways, and who, I shouldn't say set in their ways, but had been used to one experience and varying definitions of individual performance, varying definitions of team performance, varying cultures and values. Um, I think you have to start with the values. If
Mm,
people don't, like, most people want to be high performers at something. So if we can get aligned on the definition of high performance, and
mhm.
I've managed a lot of software engineers. Sometimes software engineers just want to solve the hardest problem. That is not the same as high performance, though. A lot of times there's one hard problem we have to solve, but also there are a lot of simple ones that we just got to knock out, right?
Yeah.
So balancing those things for engineers and making sure their uh, performance to them is about delivering on user outcomes and not just solving the interesting puzzles, right?
So it sounds like you feel that it's not just entirely on the team being high performers, but by the leader being able to manage those teams and know where their strengths and weaknesses are, and having a good idea of knowing what drives them. So your engineers, they need to have clear deadlines, clear expectations, and you'll be able to get the deliverables you need, which will influence your team to be high performing.
Yeah. So a while back, I read a paper. I need to find it, but it followed the track record of executives switching jobs, and it's like, we know it's kind of normal at the executive level to be in a job for 2 to 4 years and move to a different company. Um, and the paper found there really wasn't much correlation between performance in one job and performance in the next. And as they dug into it, what the research suggested was that executive performance had more to do with the relationships around that executive than with their own individual contributions. And that kind of like had a light bulb moment, right? So
Interesting.
I always
Yeah.
thought the manager, the leader's job is to, um, get the group all singing in harmony, not a bunch of individual mercenaries, but really working together.
Mm.
And that I guess, solidified that belief for me when you've got people at the highest level, and most executives are pretty performance oriented themselves, right? They're high achievers. There's something wrong with all of us that drove us to get to this level.
Yeah.
And for that group to not be successful without relationships really, I think was an aha moment for me. So since then, I've always tried to really emphasize when I'm coaching managers on how to build and run teams. You can think of your team as a collection of individuals, or you can think of your team as a collection of relationships. Are Wayne and Garth really working well together? And are they is the whole greater than the sum of the parts?
I really like that. Think of a team as a now I'm trying to remember. Think of a team as a
collection of relationships. The simplest you can.
I'm writing this down because I don't want to forget.
Pairs.
Yeah, and instead of think of it like that, instead of individual contributor, a team as a group of individual contributors. Okay, I love that. That's awesome. Look at that, dropping knowledge bomb over here. And Cyber Leaders Unplugged. Bam. I just got light bulb. Yeah. Did someone write that down? Yes, I'm telling you, Ben, I did. It was awesome. Like that was some knowledge bomb right there. So, but thank goodness this is recorded. So I'm going to be going back and making sure I capture that. So that was, spot on that. So before we wrap up, I know we've got a couple of minutes. I want to kind of give you the stage and pass it over to you for a minute. Advice for CTOs, advice for people that are getting into startups, anything you would like to say to the community before we do a sign off to everybody?
Well, if you're thinking about getting into a startup, other than make sure they've got decent runway, and a good mission, and the most important thing are the people. Like I telling my story at Query, we pivoted. What we've been successful with at Query is not what Query started out as. And so when you join a startup, the people you're around will hopefully stay. The mission may change or be refined. So join for that. As far as CTOs, the most important thing is to stay focused on the customer outcome. That's an easy trap for technologists to fall into. Like I said, just working on the hardest puzzle and not, is this useful to anybody? So
I love it. Wow. Well, thank you, Jeremy. I'm going to send you to the green room. And then I'm going to say goodbye to my community. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for being the first one for season 1, episode 1 for Cyber Leaders Unplugged. This was
Thanks
awesome.
for having me.
My pleasure. Cheers. Oh my gosh. What did you guys think? First, season 1, episode 1. Let me know. I absolutely loved the chat. Thank you, Kevin, Professor Blackhop. It was great to see you. Ben, Chris, Carrie. I think I saw Carrie in there for a little bit. Hexter. Hexter, I love that you are taking my AI course. Let me know how it goes. And I just saw that Drone Blaster jumped in, and Mark and Chris were in here earlier. You guys are fantastic. I wouldn't be doing these shows if it wasn't for you. So thank you. Welcome back again. If you're new to the community, I'm thrilled that you're here. I'm going to be back here on Tuesday at 5:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I have actually got Joy coming on, Joy Belinda. She is, if you guys know anything about CMMC at all, that is the Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification. She is with one of the leading companies in that space, Summit 7. I met her, believe it or not, by happenstance at RSA like 3 years ago. I was supposed to be moderating a room, and somebody asked me to swap, and I happened to do her birds of something. I forget what they call it. It's like an open room where you talk through things. That's not the point. The point is Joy's awesome. She's going to be here next week. You guys don't want to miss that. Thank you all again, and I'll see you guys on the flip side. I'm out. Bye.